been under the same ownership?
Yep. Yep. This is Monstera. You'll see this all over the roadside. This is a common leaf pattern they copy for aloha shirts, tablecloths, quilting. This is very common. And then it does produce a fruit that people eat, this Monstera fruit. It's got to turn yellow and ripe. And there's some bananas up there. We'll pick soon.
What's that fruit taste like?
They say it tastes kind of like a pineapple. And then one stalk of bananas one bunch per stalk, and then they just keep rejuvenating underneath here.
That is insane, actually. I've never seen anything like that.
Take a picture inside.
Screen capturing.
Yeah. Farmers, they're selling the raw cherry, which you refer to the coffee when it's raw. Crop is cherry. And we'll get into that in a little bit. These coffee trees are 110 years old.
Wow.
Coffee trees will live to about 120, but this is not where we're picking coffee, because the best years for farming and getting enough coffee are 5 to 20 years old. But even these old trees will produce a little bit of coffee. Henry Nicholas Greenwell came here to Kona in 1850 from England, and coffee was already here. Coffee was here since 1828. The Japanese families lived on the coffee plantations, and they're still a big part of coffee today, because you'll see these elderly Japanese folks coming in, managing their land by themselves. So he settled here, met his wife Elizabeth, and that historical museum off of the highway, they sold coffee there at a general store. And so they realized they needed to get into learning about coffee and growing coffee. And that's what they proceeded to do for several years. And in 1873, they submitted their coffee into the Vienna's World's Fair, won a top prize, and started exporting their coffee from that point on. As I was saying a minute ago, this farm is run by the 4th generation of Greenwells. So they've had this in their family for 160 years, and they live below the property. And like all farmers, they're here about 7 days a week. What makes this area perfect for growing coffee is this built-in shade that we get. Our weather pattern is we're hot, burning up in the mornings, and then the clouds start forming. And then by noon, we're completely shaded in up here. The coffee likes shade. Some countries are actually going to grow it under shade trees. And so it's built in here. So we'd be shaded in, get some rain, and they're still going to be hot, burning up down at the beach. And that's why coffee doesn't grow down there. Coffee needs to be at about a 700-foot elevation to about 3,400 feet. It also loves this soil. Since we're a new island, it's rich in volcanic nutrients, so it's great for coffee trees. We all garden on top. We all garden all the time. And then the third thing is the trees themselves. The trees were from Brazil, and they didn't produce the same amount of coffee year after year. So now the majority of coffee farmers have a Guatemalan variety of tree that's known as a Kona typica, and it produces an Arabica coffee bean. In this Kona coffee belt, it's only 22 miles long from above Kona Airport. They grow coffee to about 10 minutes south of us. There's between 700 and 800 small coffee farms. 95% of them are going to be under 5 acres. A 20-acre coffee farm is very big around here. We're not like Colombian coffee growers. We're small. We don't have a whole lot of it. All of it is hand-picked, and we refer to it as coffee cherry. You can see it's red up there. Coffee is a fruit. It's not related to the cherry. We just call it cherry because it looks like little cherries when it's ripe. And we're going to head down and take a look at some of it. If you live over an acre or two, this is a lot of coffee this person just picked. Those are 100-pound sacks, so they picked a lot of coffee today. And if you have over a certain amount of acreage, you're going to need to hire coffee pickers. And they're going to be paid, and they're going to get paid by how much they can pick. And the 100-pound sacks, I won't lift it up because it's wet. The 100-pound sacks, they're going to pick maybe 2 of those sacks in one day. About 200 pounds, because they're going to get paid for as much as they pick. And that blue sheet over there has the coffee prices on it. You see $1.09, does it say $1.05 and 90 cents? The $1.05 per pound, if he's he's probably going for $1.05. They have a relationship with these farmers. They tally him in as $105 per sack to be paid by the end of the month. If he wanted to be paid faster by the week, it would be $90 for one of those 100-pound sacks. Your coffee pickers, if he had to hire them, they're going to get over 50% of the cost of that sack of coffee cherry. A good year of coffee, we can get about 10,000 pounds of the raw cherry per acre. That does not mean you're getting 10,000 pounds of roasted coffee. It's 7 to 1. So you need 7 pounds of cherry for 1 pound roasted. We'll head over here. This big silver machine is a pulper that pulps the skin off of the coffee cherry. And you can see the skins right there. That red, that's the skin being pulped from this machine. And we're going to do that by hand when we come back up here. This is the old mill. That's another variety of avocado next to it. And that's papaya, that tall tree. With a green fruit, not ripe yet. I know in California they charge a lot for avocados. People are just These big roots go back and forth. These are called Poshidanas. They're closed because it was just raining. We have 4 huge decks under those 4 roofs, and that's what we lay the coffee out to dry on. When it's sunny, those roofs will be open, and the platform will be exposed to the sun, and you lay the coffee out there, and it needs to be there about 7 days, and we're going to rotate it every half an hour so every side gets dry. And then when the rain comes, they're going to pull the roof over the coffee so it stays dry. And for it to be dry, we'll step back. I don't know where this person's going. In order for it to be dry, it's got to be at 11% moisture. So they'll bring a moisture reader out there to see what the temperature is of the coffee. To see what the moisture level is. It has to be at 11%. I'm going to head over here. This is not ripe yet. If this was ripe, these would look like, as I said, little cherries on here, and I'll show you where it's starting to ripen up. You can see the trunk of this tree is a lot different than a 110-year-old trunk. This is going to be 5 to 10 years old.
So what do you guys do with the 100-year-old? They're just there.
They're historical.
They're historical.
And some farmers, if they got a piece of land, they probably would pull out old trees, because if they're farmers, they want trees that can produce as many coffee beans as possible.
So after like 5 years or so, you have to replace them?
5 to 20 years old, so after 20 years they'll replace these probably, once they start getting up there. This tree is in the family of the gardenia, so if you have a gardenia back in LA, you're going to have the same leaf. This is not ripening up at the same time, and I'll show you examples of this. This is going to start ripening up the end of this month, and our season goes through February, so you could be picking this tree 6 times between that end of September through February. Little white flowers form on these trees at different times of the year. They only last 1 to 2 days and fall off. This tree is self-pollinating. The bees aren't pollinating it. In the spring, it'll be loaded up with white flowers, and it looks like snow has fallen, so they call it cone of snow. We don't use pesticides. There are pests that can go after these trees, but we're not going to get it with pesticides. We do trim these trees way back, and I'll show you over there where we did it. And we do use fertilizer. They're going to check this soil about 5 times a year to see what it's lacking, so they can put that in the fertilizer to amend what it needs. How the coffee pickers are going to pick this, they're going to have full long sleeves, long pants because of the sun, the mosquito, and bees out here. And they make a stick, they make a hook on one end and a little rope on the other, and the hook will pull the tree down so you can pick the higher portions of it. And then on the other end is the little rope that you'll stand on, so your hands are free, and you'll have a basket, a Lahala basket around your waist to only pick the red cherry and then throw it in the 100-pound sack. As I was saying, it takes 7 pounds of this raw crop for 1 pound roasted. So you feel like you've picked a lot of coffee, 35 pounds or whatever. That's really only 5 pounds of roasted coffee. It's not as much as you think. And I'll show you over here some good examples. Here's a good example of a tree not ripening up at the same time. There's 4 cherries on here that are getting ripe. If they don't come up and spot pick this, they're at about 700 feet. They need to spot pick, or this is going to go overripe. Crimson is a great color, but then it's going to go overripe. It's got about 2 weeks of a window once it's ripe before it goes overripe. And we don't want any underripe or overripe coffee to be roasted. But you can see how it's slowly starting to ripen up here, and they're going to need to go through here and spot pick it. And I'll show you over here where we trim these trees way back.
Are the trees all the same variety?
Yes. Yep. This is very rare. Kona is not, we don't grow our coffee on these flat areas. This is all ripped up from feral pigs in the last week coming through here. Most of Kona has their coffee on a slope. If you've been driving around up here, you know they call it up Mauka because we're up the mountain. Coffee is grown on sloped land with rocks between it. I think all the Hawaiian Islands grow Hawaiian coffee. Oahu, Maui, Molokai, and Kauai. Kauai has some old sugarcane fields that Hawaiian coffee's grown, and they're going to use machines to strip off the beans. They're not going to hire pickers. They're going to just strip it off. We don't do that because we only want ripe coffee cherry. And so this tree was trimmed up way back. They kept 3 really good shoots. This won't produce coffee this year until next season. So if we trim back every tree, we wouldn't have any coffee. This coffee they're going to pick this year, and then they're going to trim that back because you can see how they're bending over. And the trees will snap. The branches can handle just so much.
How often do you trim them back?
Every couple of years. Yep. And any tree in Hawaii, if you don't trim it back, you're never going to be able to it's going to get way too tall. Some of the best fruit, you know, there's a lychee over there that you can't get to, or a mango over here. If you don't control your trees, they get way too tall. We're going to head up here and open up some coffee. This greenhouse is full of coffee trees that were grafted for pest resistance. And somebody that lives here can go and buy a coffee tree and put it on their land, and 3 years later it's going to produce coffee. Pulper is going to pulp off the skin. We're going to do that by hand for demonstration purposes. So if we picked 100 pounds of coffee, we're going to pull our truck up here. We're going to weigh it, and you're going to immediately need to start processing it because it's a fruit and it will rot and ferment if we left it aside. And it's been out in the sun, but you can just grab one of these. That's pretty good. You guys can grab one of these. We're just going to pop these open for demonstration. See, if it sits out, it gets pretty black. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what the machine does. We're going to just pop it open, pinch it. It's going to go flying, so you try to catch it. So yes, they pulp off the skin, and the skins are falling into the back of that truck. And then the beans are being shot through that white tube in the middle where those two bins are. So everybody got two beans? 95% of your crop has two beans that have split in the sugar like this. 5% of the crop is one bean, that's the pea berry. It's almost like a football shape. It hasn't split into two, it stays as one. No matter where you grow coffee, 5% of your crop is a pea berry. And it creates a sweet coffee that's roasted and tastes a little sweeter once it's roasted. So they catch the skins, and then the beans are being shot into this bath in the middle. The skin, the coffee pickers would eat the skin because it has sugar, and then we would use it as a mulch. The taste is okay. It's kind of like a pepper without any flavoring. That was until this company from, you want to make sure there's nothing on that, like an ant or something. This company on Maui analyzed this skin, and it has 8 times the antioxidants as blueberries. Wow. So this is way healthier than blueberries. So now, when they pulp that skin, they'll lightly dry it, and this company from Maui picks it up and makes it into an antioxidant drink, which is called Kona Red.
Oh, Kona Red.
So that's really healthy. And you can see the beans are coming through this tube here. So they're going to rinse the beans of that sticky substance, which is sugar, and that's called mucilage. So it goes into these middle bins, they're going to rinse it, it's going to ferment overnight, and then they're going to lay it out on these Hoshidana decks that I was talking about. They're closed because it's raining. But this is how we dry the coffee. Normally, the deck, the roof would be pushed aside, the sun would be on this coffee, and they're going to rotate it every half an hour with a rake. And then they're going to check the moisture after about 7 days to make sure it's at 11%. And that's what's known as parchment. And farmers can keep their coffee like this for up to 2 years if they feel like it, before milling it and roasting it. So they let it dry there, and then they gather it up, and then this parchment needs to rest for 45 days down in the warehouse. So even if we had just picked that sack of coffee, we've got 7 days of drying. We have to take all the layers, but then 7 days of drying, and then 45 days of resting. We're about 2 months away from roasting, even if we had just picked that. Then after the 45 days, they mill off the parchment, and then there's another layer under there, my hands are filthy, which is the silver skin. And if we took all those layers off, this is a very tiny one, but this is a green bean. And this is what 90% of our coffee gets shipped out as. So in LA, San Francisco, Japan, wherever, they buy green beans, they roast it themselves, and they put their own name on it. Chances are probably in LA and San Francisco they're going to blend these. So if they say they have Kona coffee, you might want to ask, is it 100% Kona or have you blended it? But that's their prerogative. These beans last for 2 years before roasting. So that's what the majority of our coffee gets shipped as. But what we do before roasting is we size these beans with little screens by the width, because that's how you catch your pea berry. And that's how you catch your different sized green beans. If you look at a bag of coffee, the beans are all the same size, basically. And so our private reserve, if you tried that coffee, that is grown solely here. That's why it's the estate coffee, kind of like a winery where it's your estate wine. They're picking the biggest, widest green beans off of this farm and then roasting it, which creates a very smooth coffee, the bigger the green bean.
So how's that done? Is it done by some kind of scanning machine? Or
no, they fall into little screens, and they're sized by the width. Like this is a very small green bean. We could get green, like you can see that the ones you're holding are going to turn out to be a lot bigger than this. And then a medium coffee is only roasted at 410 degrees for about 18 minutes. And there's more caffeine in a medium roast. The longer it's roasted, the less caffeine. So people think a dark cup of coffee has tons of caffeine. It's actually the opposite. A flavored coffee, they're going to roast these green beans and then coat it with a natural oil of macadamia or chocolate afterwards. And then our decaf, we send all the way up to BC, Canada, where they take out the caffeine with water. And then we get it back and we roast it, and that's called the Swiss water process. His last name is Swiss, that's where that comes in. In the old days, they would take a green bean, slowly roast it in a skillet over the stove. Even locally, people will throw these in a hot air popcorn popper and roast it. But you're always going to start with a green bean of pea berry or a green bean of regular coffee, and then you can roast it any way you want. Does anybody have any questions? I can throw them away because we don't have a trash can down here. I should. We can have you try a pea berry roasted coffee bean with chocolate. Yeah. So it's quite a process, taking all the layers off, drying it, storing it. It's quite a process. Yeah. So all these people look like they're picking their coffee themselves. That they're not paying. They're not probably paying pickers. Mm-hmm. I see some very elderly people coming in here.
Wow.
They're handling their coffee.
So anyone is free to come in and pick?
No, not off the street. This farm has relationships with farmers.
Okay.
And so, like, my neighbors have 4 acres and they've been selling it here for about 20 years. We'll just stay off to the side. Yeah, so it's just not anyone off the street. So they establish themselves. They have to prove that it's their land by their tax map fee. And then they can sell it here.